Hi, Eric here. I want to take, I don't know, 5 or 7 minutes to do a screencast just to give you some information about the Census project. I did hear from Tammy that there were quite a few concerns at the online leads meeting on Friday, and I wanted to address some of those. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I just wasn't feeling well, although based on what happened, I really wish I would have just went to the meeting to possibly allay some fears. I do want to say I appreciate all the concerns. I mean, I definitely want this to be a project that people understand and agree with the philosophy of. Why is this project important? I'll get to that in just a minute, but more or less, I am just, honestly and sincerely um, curious about what's actually happening in all of our online courses. And I say that as someone who's an online lead or someone who cares about the quality of our courses, but really my interest stems from being an online instructor, thinking about my own teaching, and really just being curious about what other people are doing and where we're headed and what our norms and best practices are. So that was the impetus behind this entire project was to really get a snapshot of what's happening in our courses right now. Um, I guess one of the questions that came up is, why don't I have a hypothesis? Is there something I'm looking for? And I explicitly do not have a hypothesis or a particular question I'm looking for. And let me talk about my reasoning for that. Um, I wanted to go into this project open-minded, without assumptions and biases about what is a quality online course and what isn't. Now, of course, I do have my own biases, and that's one of the things that bothers me. When I look at courses, am I only looking at them through the lens of how I teach and how I feel like an online course should run? I am in no way confident that the way I think a course should be run is the only or the best way. And again, that's why I'm really interested in seeing what is actually going on, because maybe someone's doing something better than I am. Maybe there are better ways of doing things, new ways, different ideas that I haven't thought about. So I don't have a hypothesis. This is not a research project. It's not an assessment project. It's not an evaluation project. This really is just an attempt by me to do an inventory, a census of what's happening in our courses now without making judgments, without drawing conclusions, without going in initially trying to decide ahead of time what I'm looking for and what I'm hoping not to find. So I don't have a hypothesis. I'm going to leave that for someone else later down the road who maybe wants to come up with a student learning project or an assessment project based on the data that we gather. Um, Looks like I spelled evaluatory wrong. Let's see. Maybe not. Anyway, I just said this. This is not an evaluation project. This is not my attempt to go in and judge courses as being good, bad, or mediocre. So I just want to disabuse anyone of thinking that this has anything to do with an evaluation. And if you can't trust me on that, then I guess you just don't want to participate in this project. But this is from me to you, one faculty member who cares about good teaching and good student learning to everyone else. I am not trying to make judgments about courses. That's up to you as online leads to do. Um, I think there are three components of this census project. Um, the two in red are things I'm interested in. The analytics part is something Steve Kaminsky talked about, and I'm really interested in the kind of data we can get from analytics. But I do understand that there's this kind of big brother aspect possibly to the analytics. Um, I hope that doesn't hold us back from using the analytics to get information that might be helpful. But I'm interested in really the first two parts here. The course reviews, those are, that's my look at courses. And then surveys and interviews, those are my attempts to get feedback directly from faculty. I'm going to set the analytics aside. It is not a necessary component of this census, but I think these are the three aspects of this overall census project that we might be thinking about this year. Analytics is really a way to look at what's actually happening by looking at actual activities inside the course. Again, I do think there are some reasons why we might want to look at that, but the analytics component is not a necessary part of the course reviews or the interviews of things that I'm really driving forward on. So let me go back quickly to why the census project is important. I was doing some thinking about how many teachers I had as role models before I started teaching. I first started teaching in graduate school as a GTA my first year of graduate school, and then I had my own standalone course my second year as a grad student. And even though I had never taken a class on teaching methodology or a class on education, I was just thinking about all of the information I had about best practices and norms of classroom teaching. Um, Starting in grade school, I figure I had about 7 teachers. Middle school, I had about 8 more. High school, I had around 15 teachers, maybe more actually. College, I estimated I had about 30 professors or instructors. And then in grad school, I had about 10 more, which totals around 70. These are faculty and teachers that I had direct and ongoing experience with over the course of many years, thousands of hours of interaction with these teachers, figuring out, what happens in the classroom. What are the different kinds of things that teachers do? What works, what doesn't work, what works for me. I saw tons of different styles of teachers, and so simply by the fact that I had had 20 years of experience in the classroom as a student, I came into the classroom really having a pretty good idea, a pretty good sense of what the norms and best practices were. Um, if I count all the teachers on television and in books, I'm thinking about everything from Little House on the Prairie to Stand and Deliver. I mean, we are immersed in role models of classroom teaching from the time we're in kindergarten or preschool. And all of us come to the classroom with this wealth of knowledge of general best practices and norms. Not maybe about what works best, but a general sense of what works and what doesn't, the kinds of things people might do in the classroom, the scope and the range of acceptable practices. And we've seen lots of examples of successes and failures. And I think this puts a first semester in class teacher in a very different position than someone teaching online, including me. I've taught online for going on 15 years, and I still feel like I'm totally in the dark compared to teaching in the classroom. I'm going to show a couple of slides. I'm already at 7 minutes, so I'll take a few more minutes here, and hopefully you'll stick with me. I did ask all of the instructors whose courses I reviewed as part of the pilot part of the census to take a survey, and the data that I'm going to show here is compiled from 17 people who responded. And the survey has question logic. So for instance, if you said you didn't use the Dropbox, then you didn't get to answer what you used the Dropbox for. So the question logic means not all participants answered all questions, and a few of the questions got skipped. But this will give you a sense of what I got out of the faculty survey. How many semesters have you taught this particular online course? Quite a few people are their first semester or their first few semesters, and then there are those of us over here. This was, I'm thinking BT, Steve Kaminsky. A few people have been teaching online for quite a while. But this next slide is really, I think, if for no other reason than this, why we need to do this census project. If you can't read this, it says, other than your own, how many other courses have you had access to with sufficient time to really get a sense of what the course was about? I wanted to know what kind of experience and exposure our current faculty have had to other online teaching environments. And pretty clearly, the highest score was none. 5 of the pilot instructors have never looked at another course at all. And, most of them have looked at very few courses. Again, this is probably BT and Steve Kaminsky and maybe a few other people. But these are the people I'm really thinking about. Are we satisfied just having people look at maybe a master course and then go teach a course and really have no experience with what other people are doing, what else might work? My main drive in this census project is to give all instructors a much better idea of the kinds of things that are happening in our online courses. I'm going to flip through a few slides here, take a few more minutes. This is how many different online courses have you taught? What kinds of tools are you using? What are you using the events for? How do you use email? How often do you update the gradebook? Do you use Dropbox assignments? Do you use Turnitin.com? How many quizzes do you use? What kinds of quiz questions? Do you give students feedback on quizzes? Do you make the statistics available? How often do you post news items? Do you leave news items there? Do you remove them after they're old? How do you engage students? What's the main way that you engage students with two-way engagement through discussion or email? How do you broadcast information out, email, news, etc.? I had lots of questions about discussion. I thought this was pretty interesting. How many different days a week do you log into the course? Looks like most of our instructors are logging in at least 4 or 5 days a week, and 7 days a week is the most popular answer. This was interesting to me. How many individual sessions do you think you do per week? How many hours are you spending teaching? Do you think you could be more efficient? How much total time do you teach? What kind of course model do you use? I thought this was pretty interesting. A few people have mostly self-paced courses. Most of us are doing mostly synchronous and totally synchronous. So I thought this was interesting if we're thinking about what kind of course model are we using. How important is student-to-student interaction? Most of us think it's important or vital. A few of us think it's marginally or unimportant. More questions about discussion. I thought this was interesting. When participating in discussion, what percentage of posts do you expect students to read? Most of us expect students to read most, but not all. Do you read every student post? It looks like most of us are reading every student post. I would have had to say no. I would have been down here. I didn't take this survey, but I would have been down here. How do you grade discussions? How many different days per week do you expect students to be active participants in discussion? I thought this was pretty interesting. 3 days a week and no requirement were the top scores here. How many different days per week are instructors participating in discussion? I thought this was also interesting. Of all the discussion posts made, what percentage of them are posts that you, the instructor, make? And I thought it would be interesting to match up these perceptions with what I actually found in the census data. How many pages of content, what types of content have you put in your course, etc. Right? What kind of links, how much of your course have you created, how do you use the gradebook? So as you can see here, I'm not pulling out information, I'm not tying it to particular instructors. What I plan to do is send the individual instructor data back to the instructor, and everyone else will only get to see, the aggregate data. But even with this, I hope you can see a sense of how this might be useful for someone new to teaching, or how it might be useful for us to think about what are the basic strategies people are using to teach. Or if I'm an outlier in one of these areas, I might know who can I ask who's doing something different to find out if they're having more success than I am. While I'm at 13 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and take a couple more minutes here and just show here's some of the data that I got from the 22 courses I've looked at so far. Things like are proctored exams required, how many news items are posted per week, what are news items used for, how many students have put profile pictures, numbers of quizzes in a course, how are quizzes organized, are they organized into categories, no organization, numbers of discussion topics, how are discussions organized, is it one forum, are people using forums and topics, use of discussion headers, average number of discussion posts per week, I thought this was interesting, average number of student posts per week. I found this immensely interesting that lots of courses are having students only posting less than 1 or 1 to 2 posts per week. This is instructor posts per week. The highest percentage was 4 or less. What percentage of posts were made by instructors? I found this just mind-boggling that a couple of people are posting more than half of the posts are instructor posts, and then lots of people are down here with 0 to 5 or 6 to 10. And notice, I'm not making any judgments here. I'm not saying that these people are better than these people. In fact, I'm not sure who's better. They may have completely different reasons for doing discussion. I need to wrap up here. I'm almost to 15 minutes, and I promise to keep this short. please email me, call me if you have concerns about the census project. I really do feel strongly that this is something we need to work on, and I want to work to allay people's fears. So I will have more information soon. And thanks for paying attention.